Hi, garden friends. Welcome back to the Garden Girls podcast. I'm Meg,
And I'm Dagny.
and our friendship started in a group chat talking all things gardening. And so we're inviting you guys into our group chat. And today we're going to be talking about beginner gardening. If you're a beginner and you've never gardened before, we're just going to give you our advice and our best tips that we have for you guys. This was actually a listener request. We get this request quite a lot,
Oh, I
I
get this
think.
like in my DMs constantly. So I'm really glad that we're
Yes.
covering it because it can be really hard to address in a DM for a lot of reasons. I mean, it's a very time consuming thing to type out, but also it can be very specific to your climate and stuff. So I think it'll be good to be able to kind of give general, broad overview of everything for people starting out.
Right. It's kind of a hard topic because there's so many
Yeah.
variables with gardening, and it's something that can take a lifetime to fully master. And us ourselves, we're not even masters. There's
Mhm.
things that we're still constantly learning and we're constantly improving upon. So we're not experts by
Nope.
any means at this point. I've been gardening for about 5 years now. How long have you been
Yeah, I
gardening?
mean, I've always been around gardens, but my first big garden was probably about 7 years ago. Yeah.
We're still baby gardeners ourselves. I
Yeah.
mean, we have our whole lifetime to do this. But yeah, I think just we'll go over the simple stuff and just the basics
Yeah.
for somebody that's never gardened before. It's August now, so I would say depending on your climate, depending on what climate you're in, you could still start a garden from scratch
Yeah.
now, especially a fall garden.
And honestly, a fall garden, I highly recommend doing that as your first beginner gardener
Yeah.
because it's a lot easier. Like there's less pests overall. You're dealing with less extreme weather fluctuations. Like people think that it's a lot harder because you're dealing with cold temperatures, but honestly, cool temperatures are easier than hot temperatures in my opinion.
I totally agree with this. I
Yeah.
think fall is definitely the time to start. You might not be able to grow some of the like most popular summer stuff that people grow, but if you listen to the previous episode right before this, we actually talk about fall gardening and what we're planning to grow. And so you can get some inspiration from that episode if you go back and listen to that.
Hmm.
I think like the very first thing going into starting gardening is, and this is just my personal opinion, I think just start small. I think it's so easy to get overwhelmed. And when you decide you want to start gardening, you're just like, it's so exciting and you just want to do all the things. I would say just take it easy.
Yeah,
Start so small, like the smallest that you can do.
that's right. And I feel like anything can be a garden. Even if you don't have the space or the time, the money, the energy to build an entire raised bed, put it in your house. I don't care. Put it on your windowsill. You've got three little pots of herbs. You have your first garden. And I think that can be an excellent way to start because it gives you a positive first experience. And that is probably my number one thing that I tell people is like set yourself up for success so that you enjoy it the first year. And like, yes, your mindset matters when the mistakes happen, which they will, or just things that happen that are out of your control and seeing them as lessons instead of failures. But I do think starting small, like you said, and keeping things simple and giving yourself that first positive experience will give you the momentum you need to continue doing it as you go on.
The mindset thing is important too because it's really easy nowadays to get so caught up in social media. And like when you're starting out, it's like, why does my garden not look like this person's garden?
Mhm.
And that person that you're looking at and that you're like idolizing or like you're being inspired by, they have so many years of gardening under their belt. Like you're not seeing all the failures that it took for them to get to that point.
Right.
You're only seeing their successes. And so I would definitely say don't compare yourself to everyone that you see on social media
The
is really
comparison game
important.
is awful. And even just thinking about like different climates, like if you compare yourself to
Yeah.
somebody on the West Coast and you're on the East Coast, like things are just totally different and they can grow completely different things that we can grow. So a lot of that is just like stuff you pick up over time, but it is important to go into it with that mindset of just keep it positive. Just accept
I,
that like it's out of your control a little bit.
yeah, I think also like the mindset of viewing mistakes as learning opportunities instead
Right.
of failures. Like instead of saying, I tried to grow carrots and I failed and I'm just a sucky gardener, just reframe it as like, okay, I learned that carrots don't like dense clay soil, or I
Yeah.
learned that carrots need more sun, or I learned this or that. And that is going to set you up, I think, for in the long haul to be a successful gardener for sure.
That, and also just kind of not seeing the garden as necessarily a reciprocal thing in that we get as much as we give. Like sometimes a plant just isn't as productive as you want it to be. And the plant doesn't owe us anything, I guess is my point. Like whatever happens is going to happen. They are living things and there's variables there that you just cannot account for.
Also, you're starting this whole ecosystem, or that's how
Yeah.
I think you should look at it. You should view it as like you're beginning an ecosystem from the ground up. And it takes years for an ecosystem to grow. So, like, my first year of gardening, I had so many pests and disease issues that I don't have now, but my ecosystem hadn't been built yet. I didn't have any biodiversity plant wise.
Right.
I didn't have any flowers. I didn't have any pollinators. I didn't have any beneficial insects in my yard. I didn't have, my soil sucked. Like everything, you're starting something from the ground up, so you can't expect like 5-year results in your first year. So
No. Yeah.
I think just going into it with this kind of mindset of like you're starting this journey and it's a long haul type of thing instead of like a instant gratification type of thing is just really important. So anyway, yeah, that's your little TED talk before we get into like actually tips.
Yes. Yes. But I do think it's equally important, honestly. Like you do
Yeah.
need to just set yourself up with that mindset.
But now that we've had the TED talk,
Yes.
do you think if you were to start over all again, would you do in-ground or container gardening?
Oh God, that's a big question. I feel like it's so dependent on your circumstances. Like a container garden, you can control the soil quality a lot better. So if you know you have bad soil, that can be a really good option. But also in-ground's a lot more accessible to more people. Like you don't have to set up a huge system at first, so that makes a big difference too. I feel like a container, just because like you could literally get like a 15-gallon whatever, put the best soil you can get in it, and grow 2 or 3 of the things you're most excited about, and learn a lot from creating like a little micro ecosystem, something like
That's what I
that.
would say
Yeah.
too. Yeah, go with a container. If you are able to go with a container, get a container, either a raised bed or grow bags. I think those are my
Oh
favorite
yeah.
containers. My very first garden beds were like the cheapest Amazon beds that I could find. And I still have them to this day, 5 years
Yeah.
later. They're great. They're holding up great. I think they were like $50.
Right.
And they're just metal raised garden beds. I think they're about 8 inches tall, so they're not like the tallest garden beds, but those were my first 2 beds. My mom bought me those for my birthday, and those were my very first garden beds. And they're 6 by 3, and yeah, I set them up side by side.
Perfect. Yeah. No, a raised bed is definitely like the most popular option, the most like safe option to go with, but there's just so many options. I don't know. It just depends on where you are.
So I think our consensus is for a beginner, a container.
Agreed.
It's just going to be the easiest way to control the soil and have good quality soil.
Speaking of soil,
Speaking of soil,
tell us, Meg, what do we need to do for soil?
I think for a beginner gardener, the easiest thing when you get your raised bed or your container, go to your local gardening center and pick up either a raised bed soil mix or just potting mix. Either one will do fine for raised bed or container. You can also make your own soil mix, which I did this. It was pretty easy. It's called Mel's Mix. And I did this my first year. It's not the cheapest option by far. It's a little bit more expensive, but it is a really good mix. And it's 1/3 vermiculite, 1/3 compost, and 1/3 peat moss, which that's a little bit controversial, the peat moss situation. You can also go with cocoa coir
Yeah.
if you want. Is the same kind of substance, but that's a really good mix. And you can make it kind of in bulk if you need to, which is another good thing. But I think the easiest thing is just go with a raised bed mix,
Yeah,
just so you don't overwhelm yourself.
I've never made it. And I like it does sound easy, but at the same time I can see how it would be overwhelming or even just physically eliminating for some people. Like I'd rather just pour something in and be done with it. But the whole idea is that you're including good nutrients and good drainage, but also good water retention because that's all your plants really need.
Yeah. So go with the raised bed mix. If you want to do one better, grab some compost while you're at it.
Yeah.
Either cow manure or mushroom compost is a really popular one. Any kind of compost that they have is going to be great. Make sure that ideally you want to stick with organic soil
Yeah.
and compost, um, so that you can mix that in with the soil because that's just going to add more nutrition to your soil and it's going to make your plants grow better. And that's really all you need to do as far as soil.
Yeah. I think just keep it like really, really simple. Again, like as long as you're making sure the plants have food, because you have to remember the soil is their food essentially. So the higher quality you can get, the better. But even if you get a lower quality, as long as you can like top dress it with a compost or something, you'll be good to go.
So once you have your raised bed, it's filled with soil. Now let's talk about our favorite plants for beginners.
Oh, I'm excited for this. I have a whole
Yeah,
list. Let's
I do
see.
too. Go for it.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with leafy greens, which I know is a very broad category. So I will narrow it down. I will say lettuce is obviously a really good starting point in the cooler seasons. I think it's very easy to just sprinkle around, chaos garden it up. You don't need to do like a head lettuce. That is one thing that gets a little bit tricky with beginner gardeners. There's two different kinds of lettuce. There's the head lettuce and the leaf lettuce, but either will work and either is fine. Just something to keep in mind if you're looking at it after you planted it and you're like, what did I just plant? This doesn't look like the lettuce I thought I was getting. Really fast to grow, so I think it's just overall super satisfying.
Yeah, I agree with that. If a beginner gardener came up and asked, what should I grow? Just lettuce. It's so easy. I said herbs. I think you can never go wrong with herbs. Just an herb garden. If that's all you want to do, I think that's a great starting point. If you just want to
Definitely.
build an herb garden. But there's so many uses for herbs, culinary, medicinal. They're just pretty.
And they save you so much money because have you seen how much those clamshells are at the store? It's absurd.
Yep.
No
Mm-hmm.
way. So, and once you have one, they're usually pretty easy to propagate too, if you want to start
And
experimenting.
they reseed themselves very
Mhm.
easily as well. I would suggest maybe be careful with mint though.
That's a
Be
very good
careful with
point.
mint.
Any
Yeah.
discussion about a beginner garden, we need to talk about how mint needs to stay in a container on its own because it spreads aggressively. Yeah.
It's a very aggressive spreader.
It
So
is.
unless you want mint to just pop up everywhere, maybe either skip out on the mint for now or just make sure that it's in its own separate pot.
Right. My next one was radishes. Again, just very easy, fast crop to grow. You can grow them in any size container, and they're just, you can do them anywhere. So easy. I know a lot of people don't really like radishes. I find French breakfast to be a little bit more mild if you think radishes are too spicy. They grow so fast.
They only take 28 days from seed to harvest.
That is wild to me.
So,
It's literally like you go
so
out
wild.
overnight and there's just a whole new plant there.
Yeah, so if you're a beginner and you want some instant gratification, a radish will give that to you. French
Absolutely.
breakfast specifically. I said carrots, and I know that carrots can be a bit challenging for people, for beginners, but I personally, I don't think that they are if you just do the chaos gardening method, like just throw them out.
Yeah.
I think they can be a really great crop as long as you make sure that your container is deep enough because they need that depth. And they love like a loose kind of fluffy soil because they have to push through. So if you are deciding to garden in ground, maybe skip the carrots until you can amend your in-ground soil a little more because they're not going to like be able to push through thick in-ground soil. And
Yeah.
in-ground can take a few years to really get it to that level of like fluffiness and loaminess that carrots like.
That's
But
right.
in a container, I think they're pretty easy.
I would agree with that. I had that on my list as well. And these are things like the lettuce, radish, and carrots you can direct sow, which means you don't need to learn seed starting, which I think is a whole nother process and episode that we can get into, but
Yeah.
that does make it a lot easier. The herbs, I would recommend just getting them at a nursery because they can be a
Yeah.
little bit trickier to start from seed.
Anything that you see at a nursery that you want to grow, get it. Try it.
Yeah, you don't
Um,
have to start from seed to be a real gardener. I feel like this is
no, you
another
don't.
common misconception we see.
I still buy things from
Same.
the garden center because I hate starting seeds. That's my least favorite thing to do about gardening. I like
I know.
growing things. I don't like starting
And there's
seeds.
certain things that I'm just like, the hassle is too much. Like peppers need too much
Yeah.
heat and all of that. Like, I'll just leave it to the professionals. It's fine.
Yeah, don't let anyone ever tell you that you're not a real gardener if you don't start from seed. There's a lot of online seed starting pressure, which is so weird.
It
It
is.
is.
It is. I agree.
I
Yeah. Elitism. Yeah. It's no, it's
Yeah,
very
it's
silly.
so weird. It's
Hmm.
so weird.
Hmm.
So, but thankfully, a lot of these can just be direct sown, and I mean,
Yeah.
you technically are starting from seed if you're direct sowing these
Yeah.
things.
You're just not doing all the
Mhm.
lights and the seed cells and all the extra tools that you need. Another one you can direct sow is green beans, and they grow pretty
Mhm.
fast and pretty well. I don't usually have problems with them. I know bean beetles are apparently a thing, but I have never
Yeah.
experienced it myself. It's a
You
rewarding harvest. Yeah.
if you live in the South, where it's like Jumanji up in here, as far as like all the insects and stuff.
I
Did you have
had
any other
one
ones?
more strawberries. I Because this there's no perennials on my list other than strawberries, and I feel like strawberries are such a gateway. Like, because once you have a fresh strawberry, you're never gonna want any other kind of strawberry, and I just find them really motivating. Plus, like once you plant them, you never have to replant them. But I know that's also kind of an
Yeah.
issue.
I would suggest maybe treating them a little like mint and don't plant them in the ground because they're aggressive growers, but planting them in a raised bed should be fine.
Yeah.
Or like a small container. Like strawberries are very shallow rooted crops and they can grow in even smaller containers than a huge
Hmm.
raised bed. So yeah, those are pretty easy one to start with. I think if you're gonna go for tomatoes, I would maybe suggest a cherry tomato
Yeah.
because they can be a little bit more forgiving than a big beefsteak. And I think you'll be a little bit less disappointed if you don't grow like the biggest tomato of the neighborhood or something like that.
Yeah.
And they just like they don't require as aggressive as pruning as beefsteak tomatoes do. Either that or any kind of determinate bush type of tomato as
Yeah,
well.
so you don't have to worry about pruning as much. That makes
Hmm.
sense. Yeah. What do you think that people should avoid? Because I know what's at the top of my list. It's brassicas.
Brassicas, anything that is a heavy feeder,
Right.
like brassicas, anything that's really fussy and they take up a lot of space and they're heavy feeders and they're just yeah, so
Brassicas are the
watermelons,
worst.
brassicas are the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. And brassicas are, if you don't know what those are, it's like anything in this brassica family. So we're talking about broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage,
Brussels sprouts,
all of Brussels
kale.
sprouts,
Yeah.
kale, all of those
I mean, I feel
things.
like if you're going to do any of those, I would do kale. But
Hmm.
overall, it's just like you're just asking for frustration.
Yeah, and when we say that they're heavy feeders, they suck up a lot of the nutrition out of the soil, and you have to make sure that you're staying on top of like fertilizing them and amending their soil. So they can just be a little bit tricky for a beginner.
Yeah.
So I think if you're a beginner, just skip it. Just skip it until you get more footing. Maybe try it next year.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I also said melons for the same
I had
reason.
that on my
They
list
take up
too.
a lot of space and they're
Yes.
very heavy feeders. Watermelons, I still don't even grow watermelons
No.
because you're just setting yourself up for disappointment, especially as a beginner.
It's
Just
way too
steer
much.
clear.
Don't bother.
Yeah.
Don't save yourself the heartache. I put also things that bolt really fast because I just find that to be extremely frustrating. So cilantro for me, spinach are both things that bolt really easily. I've also had problems with arugula, but I feel like that's more variety dependent. I don't know. Yeah, so anything that bolts, that means that it's going to send up a flower and start going to seed. And well, most plants do some version of this, but it just means the plant gets really tough and woody and sometimes bitter. Like your lettuce will do this eventually too. Sometimes it sends out a pretty flower that the pollinators really like, but generally speaking, it's just adding to your frustration, which we want to avoid as you're just starting out.
I totally agree. I think we also forgot to mention things that you should plant, flowers.
Yes,
Yeah. Flowers are so important. I didn't realize this as a beginner myself.
right, me
I didn't
either.
realize how important flowers are. They're so important. You're going to have a better garden overall because, like we said, you're building this ecosystem, and you can't have a good ecosystem without flowers because the flowers are what are attracting the pollinators, not just attracting them, but feeding them. They need
Right.
nectar
And
in order to stay
repelling the
around.
bad bugs or distracting the bad bugs by giving them something else to pay attention to. Like, there's a million different, yeah. I mean, it seems like you're wasting space sometimes, but I honestly think you get more food the more flowers you plant.
That's 100% true.
Yeah.
You get more yields with more flowers.
I
So
think like my top three would be like zinnias, marigolds, and nasturtium.
I think that for me too. Calendula is another good one.
Yep.
Mexican sunflower, that's always going to be a favorite of mine. That
Mhm.
one just, but that one is very huge. I would say, we could do a whole episode about flowers. Maybe we
Which
should
we
do a whole
should.
episode
Yeah.
about flowers for beginners. But any kind of flower that you can plant, whether it's separate from your raised bed, flowers tolerate in ground a little bit better, I think, as well. And it's less
Yeah.
risky because you're not, it's not a crop that you're going to eat. So you can play around with flowers a little bit more in ground. You can also make a border. What I like to do in my raised beds is I'll plant like my main crops in the middle and then all around the outside of the border. And I'm also, while I'm doing this, I'm keeping in mind the height of each plant.
Yeah.
I don't want to accidentally shade out something by planting something taller in front of something shorter. But I'll usually plant my main crops in the middle and then I'll plant flowers and herbs all around the outside. And that way it kind of acts as like a little pest control barrier. And also it's attracting pollinators to that area. So it's going to help pollinate your vegetables.
It's a must for sure.
Yeah. It's very, very important. So now let's talk about watering. Most plants prefer about an inch of water per week.
Which is like, I feel like that's very intimidating to hear because it's like, how do you
Yeah.
measure an inch of water in your garden as you're watering, you know?
You can't really.
Right. That's
There's no way to measure it.
no.
I think the easiest way is just to check the soil with your finger. If you're a beginner, just kind of learn what moist soil feels like. You don't want it to be too wet. You don't want it to be too dry. You kind of need to learn that middle ground.
It's a lot of the gardening stuff is sensory input. It's really like learning what wet soil looks and feels like, what dried out plants look like all of these things that you kind of get a sense for, like the leaves starting to turn yellow and what does that mean, and is the soil like crust starting to dry out. Like there's a lot of things that just come with more experience, I feel like.
It's a lot of tactile learning, which
Yeah.
is just learning by doing. You
Right.
can read about gardening all day long. You can listen to podcasts about gardening all day long, but you're really not going to learn until you are actually out there doing it and you're making mistakes. That's just how it is.
It is.
But yeah, I would say that deep and infrequent watering is better than watering lightly and daily.
I agree with that because you want your plants to like
Yeah.
really reach for the water, not kind
Yes.
of have all those roots toward the surface.
And that's what I do with my beds that don't have drip irrigation is I water them very, very deeply,
Yep.
like a couple times a week instead of watering them every day. And watering very, very deeply is just making sure that the water is penetrating all the way down into the soil. And that's where you need to check with your hand because you can water just the top and you're like, oh, that's fine.
Right.
But then you'll stick your hand in there and it's like the soil is so dry and it's because it like ran off. So
And
those are good things to learn.
skip the moisture meter. Like just use your
Yeah.
hand, please. It's so
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so much easier. As far as drip irrigation, when you get more experienced, I guess that's like a really good way to make sure that your garden is getting frequently watered and watered enough, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
And it
Automate it.
makes it so much easier. It's automated. We're in 2025. Let's bring gardening and technology together. I'm all
Agreed.
for it.
Agreed. And we have
Automate everything you can.
No, I agree. We have a whole water conservation episode too. So if you want more
Yes.
info on that, it's in there
We do.
somewhere.
We have a few episodes like that are talking about these things more in depth.
Yeah,
So just
yeah.
go listen to the rest of our episodes.
Listen to everything.
Listen to everything, all of it. And then as far as pests, I do think it's important to start learning how to identify bugs when
Yeah.
you're out in the garden. Don't be afraid of bugs. I know it's easier said than done. I was very scared of bugs when I first started out, but you kind of over time, they become less and less scary. I don't know, for you, Dagny, it seems like you're
I don't
still
know if they're
very afraid of bugs.
scary to me, but they just kind of like gross me out, you know? Like I
Yeah,
just never really got used to that part of it.
they're
They're
they're just
yucky.
icky, but I think it's important to learn that not every bug is bad.
Yeah.
I used to think that like when, my first year of gardening, I would freak out when I'd see a bug, but not every bug is a bad bug. Actually, a lot of them are beneficial to your garden. So just getting out there, identifying the bugs, use your Google Lens, use your technology, use Chat GPT, use whatever you need to do. Take a picture of the bug, identify it.
Yeah.
Is it a good bug? Is it a bad bug? And if it is a bad bug, don't freak out. Don't freak
This is
out.
the thing, like
Just
you don't need to go nuclear the second you see one. Honestly, like most of the time, yes, sometimes it can mean your plants are stressed and they're attracting these bad quote unquote bugs. But a lot of times it's just a sign that your garden is a full and complete ecosystem. As long as there's a balance of both good and bad bugs. Seeing a few here and there, like I still see them in my garden all the time. But I also see the
right.
ladybugs and the beneficial wasps, and they're taking care of it, so it's fine.
Right. And like we were saying before, the first couple of years of your garden, you're going to have more bad bugs. There's going to be an imbalance until you can flesh out your ecosystem and you can plant more flowers, perennial flowers, like get more perennials in your garden, these flowers that are going to bloom all the time.
Yeah,
And native plants, I think, is really important for your native population as well, because a lot of the beneficial insects are native insects
yep,
to your area. That's really important. And I think that the flowers just play such a bigger role in pest prevention than we think.
definitely.
Also, like plants can withstand a bit of pest pressure as long as they're not being infested with pests early on. If they're a mature plant, they can withstand a little bit of pest pressure.
Yeah.
You know, I like to make a habit of getting a bowl of soapy water and walking out. And if I do see a bad bug and I don't want it on my plant, just pick it off with gloves or whatever, put it in a bowl of soapy water, and that's it. I would suggest not using pesticides. We're organic gardeners over here. You have to have the bad bugs to attract the good ones because the good ones, that's their diet. Their
Yeah.
diet's bad bugs. And if you don't have the things that they like to eat, they're not going to come. And so sometimes you just have to deal with a little bit of bad bugs to attract the good ones. But it's okay. Don't freak out. Don't freak out.
Nope.
Okay, so that's our best tips for a beginner gardener. Hopefully, this inspired you to get out and start a garden. Let us know in the comments if you have, or you're thinking about it, or what you're thinking. Let us know if you have any questions. And you guys can find us everywhere that you listen to podcasts mostly, and on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And our handles, mine is at Megros Plants, and Dagny's is at The Cottage Peach. And thank you for listening. We'll see you in the next one.